I stared at my phone for what felt like the 100th time that day, scrolling through my social media feed with a heaviness in my chest that had become all too familiar. There they were, smiling faces, party hats, and champagne glasses raised in celebration. Sarah's 35th birthday party was in full swing, and everyone from our office was there. Everyone except me. I'm Jennifer Morales, 35 years old, the accounting department's hardest worker, and apparently the easiest to forget. I zoomed in on the group photo, counting the faces I recognized. Mark from HR, Dana from marketing, even the new intern who'd started just 3 weeks ago. 23 people from our company, all laughing together at the rooftop bar downtown. It must have been an oversight, I whispered to myself. The same lie I'd been repeating since I realized what was happening. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't the first time I'd been excluded, just the most painful in recent memory. My apartment felt especially quiet that Friday night. The silence was broken only by the occasional ping of my phone. More photos appearing, more evidence of my invisibility. I closed the app and tossed my phone onto the couch, trying to ignore the sting of tears threatening to spill over. My life hadn't always been this way. There was a time when I had friends, when my weekends were filled with plans and laughter. But somewhere along the way, things changed. After my divorce 3 years ago, I threw myself into my work, taking comfort in spreadsheets and quarterly reports. People stopped inviting me places after I declined too many times. And eventually, I became a ghost in my own life, present but unseen. I walked to my small kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine. The same bottle I'd bought earlier that week, thinking foolishly that Sarah might invite me to her celebration. We weren't close, but we'd worked together for 5 years. I thought that meant something. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. Probably another scam call. I almost didn't answer, but something made me reach for it. Hello? My voice sounded smaller than I intended. Is this Jennifer Morales? A bright, enthusiastic female voice asked. Yes, who's this? Jennifer, this is Amanda Reynolds from Everyday Heroes on Channel 8. You're on live television right now. My heart stopped. What? You're on speakerphone, and we have a studio audience of about 200 people here with us tonight. Can you hear them? As if on cue, I heard applause and cheers in the background. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was this some kind of prank? Had someone from work called to rub in my exclusion even more? I think there's been a mistake, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I don't know why you'd be calling me. No mistake at all, Jennifer. We received a very special letter about you. Would you like to know who sent it? Before I could answer, Amanda continued, her voice growing even more excited. We have Sarah Williams here in our studio tonight. Sarah, why don't you tell Jennifer why you reached out to us? Sarah? The same Sarah whose birthday party I was missing. The same Sarah who hadn't bothered to invite me. None of this made sense. Jennifer? It was Sarah's voice now, sounding strangely emotional. There's something you don't know. Something I've kept from everyone at the office. And tonight, that's all going to change. I gripped my phone tighter, my forgotten wine glass still in my other hand, as the ground beneath my understanding began to shift. Whatever was coming next would change everything, and I had no idea if I was ready for it. My hand trembled as I held the phone. The silence in my apartment felt surreal compared to the excited buzz I could hear through the speaker. What could Sarah possibly want to tell me on live television? And why hadn't she just invited me to her party instead of whatever this was? Jennifer, Sarah continued, her voice cracking slightly. I need to start by apologizing. The party tonight, it wasn't just a birthday celebration. The studio audience went quiet. I could almost feel 200 people holding their breath, waiting for what came next. I was holding mine too. 6 months ago, Sarah said, I found something while organizing the company's financial archives. Something that had been buried for nearly a decade. My mind raced. The financial archives. I'd been in charge of digitizing those old records last year. A thankless project nobody else wanted. I'd spent months going through dusty boxes, organizing years of paperwork that predated my time at the company. What I found, Sarah continued, was evidence that our firm had been systematically underpaying their female employees. The discrepancy was hidden in coded payroll entries split between different accounts to mask the pattern. And Jennifer, you were the one most affected by this. I sank onto my couch, legs suddenly too weak to support me. This couldn't be right. I'd been with the company for 8 years, always the first to arrive and last to leave. I'd missed holidays, worked weekends, skipped vacations, all while male colleagues with less experience were promoted above me. The TV host, Amanda, jumped in. Jennifer, Sarah brought these documents to our investigative team 3 months ago. We've been working with legal experts to verify everything before tonight's broadcast. I don't understand, I managed to say. If you found this 6 months ago, why am I just hearing about it now? And what does this have to do with your birthday party? The studio went quiet again. Then I heard a male voice I recognized immediately. Our CEO, Richard Kensington. Miss Morales, this is Richard. I'm here at the event as well. His voice was tight, controlled. I want to assure you that as soon as this matter was brought to my attention, I launched a full internal investigation. My blood began to boil. An investigation? Without ever speaking to me. So everyone knew about this except me. The words came out sharper than I intended. You've all been discussing my career, my life, behind my back for months. We had to, Sarah said quickly. Jennifer, you don't understand. When I first found the documents, I took them to HR. 2 days later, my computer was wiped and the digital copies disappeared. Someone was trying to cover this up. The implications hit me like a physical blow. I thought about all those lonely evenings working late, the promotions I'd been passed over for, the raises that never quite matched my performance reviews. All those times I'd wondered if maybe I just wasn't good enough. That's when Sarah came to us, Amanda explained. And tonight wasn't really a birthday party, Jennifer. Those people you saw in the photos, they're all witnesses. Former employees, current staff who've experienced similar discrimination, even clients who were willing to speak up. I scrolled frantically through my phone, looking back at the party pictures with new eyes. Yes, there were familiar faces from work, but also people I didn't recognize. People who had apparently gathered to support me. But why keep me in the dark? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Do you have any idea how it felt seeing those pictures tonight? Thinking everyone had forgotten about me again? There was a pause, and when Sarah spoke again, her voice was different, worried, almost frightened, because they're still trying to hide it, Jen, and they're getting desperate. Last week, someone broke into my apartment. Nothing was taken except my laptop and the original documents I'd found. The police think it was just another burglary, but I know better. My mouth went dry. Are you saying our company is behind this? That's crazy. Not the company, Richard interjected quickly. But we have reason to believe certain individuals in upper management may have been involved in both the original discrimination and the current cover-up attempts. Amanda's professional tone cut through. Which is exactly why we're doing this live broadcast, Jennifer. As of right now, millions of people are hearing this story. The evidence is being uploaded to our website as we speak. No one can make this disappear. I sat frozen, trying to process it all. For years, I'd felt invisible, inadequate, always wondering why I couldn't quite break through despite my dedication. Now I was learning it wasn't my imagination. It was deliberate, systematic. Jennifer, Sarah said softly, there's more you need to know. And after tonight, everything is going to change. The wine glass slipped from my fingers, spilling red across my beige carpet. I barely noticed. I'm listening, I said. Jennifer? Amanda's voice came through my phone with a new gravity. We have someone else here who wants to speak with you. The studio went quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, pounding with a mixture of fear and something else. A strange, unfamiliar hope that had begun to flicker inside me. Hello, Jennifer. The new voice was deep, authoritative, and instantly recognizable. Nathan Phillips, the Attorney General. I nearly dropped my phone. Mr. Phillips? I stammered, wondering if this was some elaborate prank. But the steady, measured cadence was unmistakable. I'd heard him speak dozens of times on television. "Miss Morales, I want to personally thank you for the work you've done, though you weren't aware of it until now. The documentation you organized and digitized last year has become central to one of the largest corporate discrimination cases my office has pursued in the last decade. My apartment seemed to spin around me. I don't understand. I was just doing my job, organizing old files. What you couldn't have known," he continued, "is that those financial records you so meticulously preserved have revealed a pattern of discrimination that spans 15 years and affects over 2,000 female employees across 7 states. Your company isn't just one bad actor. It's part of a network of financial institutions systematically underpaying women and minorities." The weight of his words settled over me. I thought about all those nights I'd stayed late, carefully scanning and categorizing decades of paperwork. How many times had I complained about the tedious assignment? How many weekends had I sacrificed to complete it? And all along, I'd been assembling the evidence of my own mistreatment. "Sarah recognized what these records meant when she accessed your digital archive," the Attorney General explained. "She brought concerns to management, but when they attempted to bury it, she made the brave decision to become a whistleblower and contact my office." Sarah's voice broke in, emotional and urgent. "Jen, I couldn't tell you. They were watching all of us closely. If they knew you were aware, they might have tried to pressure you or worse. I was terrified they'd destroy the evidence before we could act." The studio audience murmured in the background. I could almost feel the tension through the phone. Amanda's professional voice returned. "Jennifer, what you don't know is that tonight isn't just a television segment. The FBI has been executing search warrants at your company headquarters and at the homes of 7 executives while we've been on the air." I gasped. "The FBI? This is that serious?" "It goes beyond workplace discrimination," the Attorney General confirmed. "We've uncovered evidence of tax fraud, obstruction of justice, and witness intimidation. The raid tonight will secure additional evidence before it can be destroyed." My mind flashed to James Harrington, the CFO who had passed me over for promotion 3 times, always with a thin smile and vague promises about next time. The same man who had accidentally called me sweetheart in a budget meeting last month. Was he among those being investigated now? As if reading my thoughts, Sarah jumped in. "James Harrington, Michael Phelps, and Victoria Winters are the primary targets. They've been running this scheme since before either of us joined the company." Victoria Winters, my direct supervisor. The woman who had praised my work while simultaneously denying my request for advancement. The woman who had looked me in the eye just yesterday and said, "We value you so much right where you are, Jennifer." "There's something else you should know," Amanda said, her voice softer now. "Those photos you saw tonight from Sarah's birthday party, that gathering was actually a meeting of over 50 former and current employees who've agreed to join a class action lawsuit. They've all experienced what you have, Jennifer, and they've named you as the lead plaintiff." "Me?" The word came out barely above a whisper. "But I didn't even know about any of this until 5 minutes ago." "Because you were the most affected," Sarah explained, "and because the evidence you preserved is what makes the entire case possible. Jennifer, the settlement discussions have already begun. The initial offer is $47 million. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. $47 million? To be divided among all affected employees, the Attorney General clarified, with you and Sarah receiving significant portions as the case principals. But more importantly, this case will force industry-wide reforms. Your name, Jennifer Morales, will be cited in corporate boardrooms and law schools for decades to come." I couldn't speak. Tears streamed down my face as years of feeling invisible, inadequate, and overlooked crashed over me in waves. All those nights I'd gone home wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't good enough. All those mornings I'd forced myself to smile at colleagues who earned more for doing less. It hadn't been in my head. It had been real. And now, somehow, it was going to change. "Jennifer," Amanda said gently, "we have one more surprise for you. Someone else is here in our studio tonight. Someone who traveled a very long way to be part of this moment." I heard movement, shuffling, and then a voice that made my heart stop. "Jenny? It's Mom." My mother. My mother who lived in Argentina, who I hadn't seen in 3 years because I couldn't afford the trip on my deliberately suppressed salary. My mother, who had raised me alone after my father died, who had cleaned houses and worked night shifts to put me through college. My mother who had always told me, "One day, mija, they will see your worth." "Mom," I choked out, unable to hold back a sob. "You're there? In New York?" "Yes, mi amor. Sarah found me. She flew me here for this moment. I am so proud of you, Jennifer. So proud." And just like that, surrounded by the evidence of my own importance that had been hidden from me for so long, I finally broke down and cried. The following Monday, I walked into the office with my head held high for the first time in years. The weekend had been a whirlwind. Hours of interviews with federal agents, meetings with attorneys, and tearful conversations with my mother in my small apartment. I'd barely slept, but I'd never felt more awake. The office fell silent as I stepped off the elevator. Every eye turned toward me, expressions ranging from awe to shame to outright fear. The weekend news cycle had been dominated by the story. Corporate whistleblower exposes massive gender discrimination scheme. My name and face had been everywhere. Victoria Winter's office was empty, her nameplate already removed. James Harrington's corner office had FBI agents boxing up files. 3 security guards escorted Michael Phelps out of the building as I arrived, his face ashen as reporters shouted questions from behind a hastily established perimeter. "Jennifer?" Mark from HR approached cautiously, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. I had no idea, I swear. None of us in middle management knew the extent. I held up my hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Save it, Mark. The investigators will sort out who knew what." I continued to my desk, where I found a large bouquet of flowers and dozens of handwritten notes from coworkers. Many were apologies. Some were congratulations. A few were from people I barely knew, sharing their own stories of discrimination they'd been too afraid to voice. Sarah was waiting by my cubicle, her eyes red, but her smile wide. "I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "Every day was torture, knowing what you were going through while we built the case." I hugged her back, still processing the fact that this woman I'd considered barely an acquaintance had fought so hard for me. "Thank you doesn't seem adequate." My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "They're finally seeing what I always saw, mija." Richard Kensington appeared, flanked by 2 members of the board of directors, and a woman I didn't recognize. "Ms. Morales," he said formally. "This is Eleanor Blackwell, our interim CFO. The board has unanimously voted to promote you to Senior Financial Director, effective immediately, with a compensation package that reflects both your experience and corrections for past inequities." Eleanor stepped forward, extending her hand. "I've reviewed your work, Jennifer. It's exceptional. I'll need your help rebuilding this department the right way." My computer pinged with an email notification. It was the settlement agreement, finalized overnight. My portion, $3.2 million, enough to buy my mother a proper home, enough to never feel trapped again. As I sat at my desk, another notification appeared, a calendar invite for a press conference that afternoon. The CEO wanted me at his side when he announced the company's commitment to systemic changes and industry-leading pay transparency measures. My phone rang again. "Amanda Reynolds from Everyday Heroes. Jennifer, our segment has gone viral. Over 12 million views since last night. We've received hundreds of tips about similar situations at other companies. This is becoming a movement, and it started with you." I looked around the office, at the people who had excluded me, who had walked past my desk for years without really seeing me. Now they couldn't look away. Now they knew my name, my worth, my power. The woman who had spent years feeling invisible had become impossible to ignore. Later that week, as I helped my mother move into her hotel suite while we house hunted together, she took my hands in hers. "You know," she said softly, "when you were little and the neighborhood children didn't invite you to play, I told you something. Do you remember?" I nodded, tears filling my eyes. You said that someday I'd be the one everyone wanted at their party. She smiled, brushing a tear from my cheek. And look at you now, mija. Everyone wants you at their party, but you get to decide which invitations to accept. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt the exhilarating freedom of being visible, valued, and vindicated. 3 months after that fateful night when my phone rang during what I thought was just another lonely evening, I stood backstage at the Women's Leadership Summit, gripping my note cards and trying to steady my breathing. Through a gap in the curtains, I could see an audience of over 2,000 people, CEOs, politicians, activists, and young women just starting their careers. 5 minutes, Miss Morales, a stagehand said with a respectful nod. Miss Morales, not Jennifer, not Jen, not, hey you. The formality still felt strange, but I was getting used to it. Just like I was getting used to the business class flights, the hotel suites, and seeing my name on the covers of business magazines. My phone buzzed with encouraging texts from my mother, who was watching the live stream from her beautiful new home overlooking the ocean. Another text came in from Sarah, who had become my closest friend and was now running our company's newly formed Ethics and Equality Division. You're going to be amazing, just like you've been at everything else. The case had been settled with record-breaking speed, partly due to the overwhelming evidence and partly due to the public relations nightmare the company faced. But its impact continued to ripple outward. 12 other financial institutions had launched internal investigations. 4 had already announced major compensation adjustments. A congressional hearing was scheduled for next month, and I would be testifying. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice boomed. Please welcome to the stage the woman who has become the face of workplace equality, Jennifer Morales. As I walked out into the spotlight, the applause washed over me like a wave. These people weren't clapping to be polite. They were standing, cheering, some even wiping away tears. For me, for what I represented. At the podium, I placed my note cards down but didn't look at them. Instead, I scanned the audience until I found what I was looking for. A table near the front with familiar faces. My former co-workers, including some who had never spoken to me before that night 3 months ago. They had requested tickets, and I had personally approved them. Victoria Winters wasn't among them. She was awaiting trial, along with James Harrington and 4 other executives. Michael Phelps had taken a plea deal in exchange for testimony against the others. 6 months ago, I began, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. I spent a Friday night alone in my apartment, scrolling through photos of a party I wasn't invited to, wondering why I was so easy to forget. A hush fell over the room. 3 months ago, I learned that I hadn't been forgotten. I had been feared, because without realizing it, I had uncovered the truth that powerful people wanted to stay hidden. I caught the eye of a young woman in the front row, her expression a mix of awe and recognition. I saw myself in her, the self-doubt, the questioning, the wondering if she was enough. Today, I want to talk to you about visibility, about the difference between being seen and being truly recognized, and about how we ensure that no one with talent, dedication, and integrity is ever again made to feel invisible in their workplace. As I continued my speech, I felt a surreal distance from the woman I had been, the one who apologized for taking up space, who worked twice as hard for half the recognition, who went home each night feeling somehow less than. The standing ovation at the end lasted nearly 5 minutes. Afterward, as I signed copies of my hastily written but already best-selling book, Invisible No More, How One Woman's Story Changed Corporate America, a line of women stretched through the convention hall. One young professional clutched my book to her chest as she reached the table. Miss Morales, you're the reason I had the courage to speak up at my company last month. They've already adjusted my salary by 40%. As I signed her book, I noticed Victoria Winters' niece waiting further down the line. Our eyes met, and she gave me a small, apologetic nod. I nodded back. This wasn't about revenge. It was about change. That night in my hotel suite, I video-called my mother. How does it feel, Mika? She asked, her eyes shining with pride. I thought for a moment. It feels like I finally got invited to the most important party of all, my own. 1 year to the day after that life-changing phone call, I stood in the center of my oceanfront home, surrounded by laughter and conversation. Music played softly in the background as caterers moved efficiently through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, nature's own celebration. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out, and the room gradually quieted as all eyes turned toward me. I smiled, taking in the faces around me. Sarah, my fierce defender who had risked everything to bring the truth to light. My mother, radiating pride from her place of honor beside me. The Attorney General who had become both mentor and friend in the whirlwind of the past year. Amanda Reynolds, whose television show had now dedicated an entire series to workplace justice stories, inspired by what they called the Morales effect. But there were others too, former colleagues who had once walked past my desk without a second glance. Some had apologized, some hadn't. All had been changed by what happened. 1 year ago today, I began, raising my glass. I thought I was nobody, just another invisible woman in a world that had decided my worth before I even had a chance to prove it. The room was silent now, everyone listening intently. I spent that evening alone, scrolling through pictures of Sarah's supposed birthday party, feeling forgotten and unimportant. What I didn't know then was that it wasn't a birthday party at all. It was the beginning of a revolution. I looked at Sarah, who wiped away a tear. I also didn't know that the work I had been doing, the thankless, exhausting work of organizing decades of financial records, would become the foundation for change that has now impacted over 20,000 women across the country. The settlement had ultimately grown to over $200 million as more companies had been implicated in the discriminatory scheme. The congressional hearings had led to new legislation, already nicknamed the Morales Act, strengthening penalties for systemic wage discrimination. They say success is the best revenge, I continued, but I've learned it's not revenge that heals us. It's justice. It's being seen, truly seen, for who we are and what we contribute. My gaze found Richard Kensington, our former CEO, now working with my newly established foundation to help companies implement fair pay practices. He nodded solemnly, acknowledging how far we'd all come. So tonight, I'm not celebrating the fall of those who tried to diminish me. I'm celebrating the rise of all of us who refused to stay invisible. Glasses raised throughout the room. And yes, I added with a smile, I'm also celebrating my birthday. My rebirth, really. Because the woman I was a year ago feels like a distant memory. The applause was warm, genuine. As conversations resumed and the party continued around me, I slipped out onto the balcony for a moment alone. The ocean stretched before me, vast and powerful. My mother joined me, wrapping a shawl around my shoulders against the evening breeze. "Happy birthday, mija," she said softly. "Though I've always seen you clearly even when others didn't." I leaned my head against her shoulder, just as I had done as a child. "I know, Mama. You were the only one for a long time." She looked out at the horizon, her expression thoughtful. "Would you go back and change it? If you could choose to have been invited to that party and never discovered the truth?" The question caught me off guard, but my answer came without hesitation. Never. Sometimes being excluded is the greatest invitation of all, an invitation to find your true worth. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification. My memoir had just hit number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Below it was a message from a young woman in Arizona who had used my foundation's legal resources to successfully challenge her own workplace discrimination. "Thank you for making me visible," she had written. I smiled, slipping the phone back into my pocket. The party continued inside. My party. And this time, everyone had been invited on my terms. For the girl who had once been too easy to forget, being remembered now felt like the most natural thing in the world.